I'm Cheryl Chumley with Bold and Blunt Podcast.
And I'm Kelly Sadler with Politically Unstable Podcast.
Talking about the election, right? The latest primary debate between 7 Republicans. What did you think, Kelly? Did you watch the whole thing? Did you make it through?
Cheryl. I had to finish up this morning. I mean, it really was very unimpressive. If anything, it solidified my opinion that these members should just drop out right now and get behind Donald Trump, because no one's going to see a poll boost from that. We're now hearing calls from Republican donors that Glenn Youngkin needs to jump into the race, because everyone kind of saw what I saw last night was that there's the lead contender, that's Donald Trump, and then there's the JV stage, and everyone on that stage last night were JV players.
Yeah, and what's up with this North Dakota governor? Nobody even knows his name, and he made it to the debate stage. Did you find that odd? Or
well, I kind of like what Doug has to say every now and again. He's a very smart man. He built his own company from the ground up. He has good family values. He has common sense solutions to problems, but he hasn't been able to really introduce himself in the race. And perhaps he got in it just to up his name ID for in another 4 years, perhaps attempting to run again, or with the aim of getting a cabinet position or elevating his national profile for his next job. But he doesn't have a shot. But I do find him a very likable man. It's just unfortunate because all of these candidates have got their positive qualities, but they're all just standing in the shadow of Donald Trump, and they can't seem to make their own momentum, their own headway, or connect with the people that they need to connect with to rise in the polls.
Yeah, I agree. This is all Donald Trump's presidential race for the Republican Party, in my view. And I don't think, no matter how many indictments get slung his way, I think his poll numbers are going to stay solid. And there's not going to be anybody else in the Republican Party who can cast a shadow to him. I did think that Nikki Haley did a tremendous job. It's funny, the more I see of Ron DeSantis, the less I really like him. The more, right? But the more I see of Nikki Haley, and I have to admit, I've always been a fan of Nikki Haley's, but the more I see of her and listen to her, the more I like her as well.
She'd be a great Secretary of State.
Yeah.
She's got the foreign policy chops. She knows what she's talking about. She's very studious. She knows her facts and figures. She's been a governor, so she has executive experience. She was great when she was at the UN, and she has put forth very pragmatic proposals when it comes to abortion. Just living in reality, there's no way that the Congress can pass legislation outlawing abortion, and we should be looking to make more movement to convince more people on the pro-life front, but we shouldn't be having these, we should just be out and out promising the American public stuff that we can't deliver. So I thought she did well there. And she's good at cutting other people on the stage down, like she did with Vivek Ramaswamy. Like the more you talk, the dumber, I feel. I thought that was, a lot of people are dinging her for that comment today, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was funny, and she stood her ground and had presence on the debate stage. Who do you think was the overall winner last night?
I do think Nikki, and just to add to a little bit more of what we were just talking about her, it seems to me like most of the other candidates, right, have to prepare to put on a good show, right? They have to keep their demeanors in check. They have to make sure they're wearing the right clothes, and they're very conscious of how they appear. And they probably come armed with some zingers, right? Like Chris Christie with his Donald Duck, which went off as stupid, but I think that was pre-planned. Nikki Haley, on the other hand, I think that she has so much, like you just rightly pointed out, in her background in terms of experience, executive as a governor, right? And then taking on the United Nations and standing strong, already working with Donald Trump, right? Being diplomatic that way. She doesn't really have to exert any type of effort to make herself appear a certain way. She just is. And when she cut down Vivek with that comment, which I liked as well, because I found it odd that Vivek, on one hand, just a little while ago was condemning TikTok, and then after he has that meeting with that boxer, that social media influencer, he wants everybody to get on board with TikTok. So it is a little flip-flop there, and a curious one, given the national security aspects of TikTok. When Nikki Haley said that to me came off as genuine. And you and I have been watching politics for a long time, and I think you and I both are in tune with politicians who just put on airs or put on shows and are fake. But she just seemed genuine, like she's had enough of this and she just let loose.
No, authenticity definitely matters, and the American people can just innately pick up on who's being authentic, who's not being authentic, and who's really there to support them and in it for them, right? A lot of these politicians are in it for themselves. We see that with Joe Biden in the White House. It's a way for them to enrich themselves, gain political power, influence, and that's the reason why they're in it, because they like that, and they want their little minions around them. It's very rare to have a public servant who is just that, is in it to serve the public. And that's what I think makes Donald Trump such a unique candidate, is everybody in America knows Donald Trump does not need to run for president again in 2024. Everyone in America knows that he's a self-made billionaire and is not getting in it for the money. Everyone knows he's not beholden to the donor class, and quite frankly doesn't care what they think or they say, or what tie he has to wear, or what outfit he's got to put on, or what lines he has to deliver. And that's something that is, and he was also president of the United States for 4 years and delivered all of the policy promises that these candidates on stage last night were promising to deliver. But if you've got the real thing, why do you need, an imposter? And to get back to Nikki Haley, Cheryl, I agree with you. I think she's authentic. I think she's strong. I think she's confident in who she is. I do not like her position on Ukraine. I think that she's a neocon. I think that she is a warmonger, and I think that she's tied to the industrial military base. And although I do believe in strength, you can't be weak on the world stage, but at the same time, you have to prioritize, the concerns of everyday Americans and make sure that those concerns are taken care of before we commit billions of dollars, that just unfettered, unchecked monies that are pouring into a corrupt country that doesn't seem to be making any progress on the battlefield.
That's a valid point. That's a valid criticism, right? And so, when I look at Nikki Haley, I don't like 100% of what I see. Just like when I look at Donald Trump, I maybe like 90, 95%. But that's the process of elimination we have to do in politics anyhow. Just go through and do the pros and cons of our candidate picks. And I agree with you on that point. I think that's a weakness from a conservative, from an American first perspective. And, I kind of wanted to bring up Ron DeSantis, because the more I see of him, like I said at the opening, the more I see of him, the less I like. And it's, I don't know, it's his smile. Is he smiling or wincing? Or, he has the right policies. He has the leadership record in Florida, and he has the principled stand against the globalism that I see as the big peril in America. But I just don't have a good feeling about him as I do about Donald Trump. I still throw as many indictments as you want against Donald Trump. He's still my pick over Ron DeSantis.
Well, Ron DeSantis he's very mechanical, and it looks as though he's putting a lot of effort in to just acting naturally, like he does on his own without being coached or being told what to say. And so there's something inauthentic with that. But it's so funny when you talk to residents of Florida, people who live in Florida, they love him. And they say that he comes off so much differently within their home state. And he flies around. He's always doing public appearances. He's very warm and caring and charismatic. But that has not translated on the national stage. And last night, he almost seemed content without saying much, without making a big splash. And if you're Ron DeSantis right now, the number two, you've got to start making splashes and not being so scripted and not being so careful with all of your actions. I guess he's going to debate Gavin Newsom, but that is not going to be until the end of November. I think it's scheduled for Sean Hannity's show on Fox News. Why wouldn't Ron DeSantis want to do that debate right now? It'd get him some national headlines. He'd be one-on-one with, the who could be, the Democratic front runner. I think it'd be a ratings bonanza, and it would help lift his profile. But there's something about his team that seems timid, scared, and doesn't quite understand that they're not the front runner, that they've got to do something out of the box to capture that status if they really want it. And they just seem too scripted and scared to actually go and get it.
If Donald Trump weren't in the running, I have to say that Ron DeSantis would be my pick, right? Because I don't need somebody who's personal and warm and all that. I want somebody who's competent, who can fight the right fight, who can uphold the Constitution. That being said, you can't help but look at Ron DeSantis and wonder what's going on, like I said, with his uncomfortable, awkward expressions and what you just described. And there's a couple of questions it's a puzzle to me, and I wonder if you have any insights on this, Kelly. The idea of a Univision journalist helping to moderate this Fox News debate, I found that a little bit bizarre. Mm-hmm. And then second, what you just brought up about DeSantis debating Gavin Newsom, who hasn't even announced a run for the presidency. I'm a little bit unclear on what the strategy is behind that.
Well, I think with the Newsom, why he accepted it is because he needs to have some national headlines. Every day that goes by is a day that's wasted on the DeSantis campaign, and the fact that he's not capturing any national news media. It's Donald Trump all day long. And then you've got, today you've got Joe Biden and the impeachment hearings that are beginning on Capitol Hill. So there really hasn't been any discussion today, a post-reaction of what happened last night. And usually candidates can bask in the glory of their performance for at least 48 hours post-debate performance, but you're not even seeing that today. I think everyone just kind of thought it was a yawn. And it's like, why are we doing it? I think, Trump's campaign manager, Las Avitas said it the best. Now is the time for the rest of the candidates just basically to get out of the race, consolidate your support behind Donald Trump. Let's put together some policy proposals and start messaging to the American public why Joe Biden cannot serve a second term in 2024.
It just looks weak. To me, it just looks weak that Ron DeSantis would do a debate with Gavin Newsom. It's coming from, I understand what you're saying about to generate the headlines and everything, but it's kind of gimmicky. And honestly, it has an air of desperation. And I look at Ron DeSantis as being a great candidate in 2028, right? And, let Trump have another term in the White House, do the course correction that this country so very desperately needs. And then it would be time for maybe Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or some other candidate in the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think that the worst political advice Ron DeSantis ever accepted was that he was going to throw his hat in the presidential ring for 2024. He just came off a landslide victory as governor. He was setting the national policy basically with the things that he was doing in Florida, like getting pornography out of our children's books in schools, taking a solid conservative stance of like what a boy is, what a girl is, and keeping, bathroom and gender ideology out of our classrooms. Taking on Disney and corporations, getting the, ESG, divesting all of Florida's pension funds from any, corporate woke stock markets and indices. I like a lot of what he did. He just got into the race flat. His Twitter launches or his Twitter Spaces launch was terrible. And now I think that every day that he remains in the race, he's tarring himself a little bit more. Whereas if he could just drop out, go back to Florida, start doing good things, then yes, in 2028, he's got a real ticket to ride. But if he stays in too long and keeps making mistakes, I'm worried about how that might negatively impact his political future.
Thankfully, Americans have short memories on political matters, it seems. So 4 years to recover from, a poorly run campaign or a poorly campaign shot, I guess would be plenty of time to bring them back to the forefront in Republican Party politics. When I look at Mike Pence on the stage, I see somebody who's kind of out of his sort of out of his error. He reminds me of more a time of Ronald Reagan type politicians, and it doesn't seem like he's making the right strong fight for the time that we live in. Do you get that impression with him as well?
Well, I just don't really know who his constituency is. And
Right.
I suppose that's the problem with his campaign. It's, a lot of the core Trump supporters, the base supporters, feel like he betrayed the president on January 6th. And he was heralded by the Democrats as a hero on that day. But there's not enough never Trumpers to kind of, they don't like how conservative he is and how evangelical that turns them off. So I just don't, he just doesn't really have a constituency. Now, that's not to say that he's not a good man, that he's not doing this for the right reasons, but he doesn't have a shot. Maybe he can go back to the House as a representative, but he's not an executive. He just doesn't have the CEO, like top dog sort of bona fides or feeling that I don't get that feeling from him. Whereas I do with a Nikki Haley, I do with a Donald Trump, I do with a Ron DeSantis, but with Mike Pence, there just seems to be something soft and you know, and I hate to say this, but he is a product of the swamp. He's been doing this for a long time. He is a politician, and all of his speeches are very well crafted. All of his one-liners are very well crafted. He doesn't take risks, and he doesn't like to upset the apple cart. And at this point in our nation's, at this point in our nation, we need somebody who can shut the government down and be unafraid to stand up for conservative values and for conservative principles and to take on the left, because the left plays dirty. And you know what? I think we're going to need somebody who can play dirty too to combat them, or it's just we acquiesce and just let them roll over us. And I think that, to me, that's what Pence feels like to me. Like if he were to get the top dog status, he would just do what the establishment told him, because he doesn't like to upset anyone.
Right. And that segues nicely into Vivek Ramaswamy, because he's the complete opposite. He's ready and willing to upset anyone and everybody, right? And he says a lot of the right things. And I agree with him. He made a comment in the debate where he said that America needs to embrace the younger conservatives. They need to do more of a reach out to the younger conservatives, which is certainly what he represents and the base that he brings. And he does generate some of that excitement. Same to me, kind of as Charlie Kirk with Turning Point USA, right? He ignites that base, which we do need more youthful energy in the Republican Party on the conservative side of things. But where I think he falls flat is just, I don't know, he just seems so young and inexperienced still. He says the right things, but I'm not comfortable with somebody that youthful being a commander in chief of the military and in charge of foreign policy with enemies who have been for decades strategizing how to take down America. I just don't think that he's ready for the position.
No, I agree with you. And the polls reflect that too. 38 years old is a little too young, but it's nice to see youth on the stage. And he has injected something into the party, an excitement, a way to talk about issues that haven't been talked about before, instead of, focusing on race and let's focus on the things that bring us together. America, that we're all Americans, the patriotism in our country. Let's be proud of who we are. And so I like that message. And Tim Scott hit on it a bit last night too. He's just another one that hasn't been able to break through, but has a very optimistic message for America and Americans. And I do believe could unite us together. It's just unfortunate that he just seems to fall to the wayside in these debates. He tried a little bit harder last night than he did in the first one. The first one you couldn't even recall if he was on the stage or not. But he's got a very inspiring story, and I think could be a great running mate to Donald Trump if he needed a vice president. I think Tim Scott would be an excellent pick.
I like Senator Scott as well. I think he made a misstep going after Nikki Haley about the curtains, the $50,000 curtain she did not buy for the State Department that Barack Obama did, but that she was blamed for. And then the New York Times, of course, had to issue a retraction. And I think Senator Scott made a mistake by bringing that up and accusing her of spending that money. But by and large, I agree. He does have an optimistic message for America. I just think that he's just like everybody else on that stage, they're being swallowed up by Donald Trump. And you just got to wonder at a certain point, when do you give it up? When do you step aside and just announce total support for Donald Trump? Because honestly, at this point in America, we need a unifying force behind Donald Trump because he's being attacked from so many different angles. It would be nice if these politicians on the stage just this week gave up their personal ambitions for the good of the country to unite behind Trump, because it's inevitable. He's inevitable.
Well, you know who argues that, and I'm going to plug some of our columns here at the Washington Times, but Scott Walker. Scott Walker is coming out with a column tomorrow where he talks about 2016 and what it was like being on the stage, the debate stage with Donald Trump, and basically was like there was no rolling over the Trump train. It was on fire, and I got out of the race. I noticed that. He's like, I see the same exact thing happening right now. These other candidates, like, you got to start. If you can't make headways, maybe it's time to drop out and for us to rally around one candidate. But to another column I want to hit on, and this is by Joseph Curl. Joe Curl came out yesterday. He doesn't believe that Donald Trump is going to be able to win, that he will actually be the candidate, that all these legal issues are going to kind of send him down, that he won't win the primary, and that Glenn Youngkin is going to be the new standard bearer. On the other side of things, he doesn't believe that Joe Biden is actually going to be the candidate in 2024. He believes it's going to be Gavin Newsom. Kind of, what's your take on that? I mean, what's your opinion of Curl's opinion, I suppose?
Well, I definitely disagree with his view of Trump. Trump will be the candidate. There's no... The left right now is trying to remove Trump's name from ballots. I would say that if they were successful, there would be so many people who wrote in Trump's name on ballots that he would still be the candidate. I just think that the left's attempt to take down Trump is blowing up in their faces. The more they try, the higher his poll numbers rise. And I'm not a big watcher of, well, I watch polls, but I don't buy into all the polls because I believe you have to read past the Twitter headlines and you have to actually look at the questions, the phrasing, the order, and so forth. But when you see certain trends in polls, and when you see polls that normally say would hate Donald Trump and do everything they could to depress his numbers, coming out and acknowledging that he's ahead so many points, like the Washington Post just had a poll, 9 points ahead, right? Joe Scarborough mocks that, laughs at it, but that's probably closer to truth than any of the other polls out there. So when you look at that and all those trends, you have to start saying, maybe there is something to these numbers that are putting Donald Trump ahead. So I see Donald Trump sailing through. He's going to be the guy. As far as Gavin Newsom stepping up, it is curious, right? Joe Biden, I think the Democrats would love to have Joe Biden again because he's such a puppet. He's such a useful tool for the globalists and the far leftists. But if he can't stand on his own, if his health compromises him to the point he has to give it up, then Gavin Newsom is a potential and a dangerous one in my view. And Michelle Obama, again, another more dangerous potential.
Why do you think Gavin Newsom is such a threat? I mean, I know he's good looking, he's got great hair, but his record in California speaks for itself. I mean, people are voting with their feet and moving out of the state in droves.
Yeah, because he reminds me of Justin Trudeau up in Canada, right? Like a good looking face with a pretty smile and good hair and nothing there except talking points, and personable, right? Can smile, can mix it up with the best of them, like we just saw with his interview on Hannity, right? After the debate and so forth. So I think he's a danger because he's everything that the Democrats would love, and they would rally behind him with energy. He would get the youthful vote. He would get the base vote because he is so far left. He would get plenty of funding because he fits right in with the Democrat socialist communist designs for America. And I think that he would be able to mix it up with Donald Trump and not bow down in a corner.
I agree. I agree with that. And I think it was curious, the fact that he actually was at the debate last night. He is the governor of California, and it was at the Reagan Library. But the fact that he was so willing to be there and go into enemy's territory and take all the interviews and do the spin for Biden, it shows some political drive on his part and some higher aspirations. But who knows if it will be in 2024. But we're definitely going to be hearing more and seeing more of Gavin Newsom. That's for sure.
Sadly.
So unless Cuomo makes a comeback, right? Andrew Cuomo, if you look at, Democratic politics, they have these power centers. Unlike, the Republican Party with Donald Trump, the dynasties, the Bush dynasties, the Cheney dynasty, everything, he shattered all of those political dynasties within the Republican Party. The Republican Party went from being the party of country club lobbyists, right, and corporatists to being populists and to focusing on, American manufacturing, blue collar workers, kind of the concerns of the forgotten man and woman in America. Whereas the Democratic Party have not pivoted at all. They have these dynasties, the Clinton dynasty. Newsom has the full, apparatchik of the Democratic system behind him. But you also have Andrew Cuomo, who is just sitting in New York, twiddling his fingers, looking for his opportunity, I think, to get back into things once again.
Yeah, I got to say, and I hadn't thought of Cuomo, but that is a potential. You're right, and he still has plenty in the base who would support him. I'm just curious. I know you're a Trump fan as well, but what do you think Trump brings to the table that would be so good for America for the next 4 years?
Well, I think that the majority of Americans right now want things to go back to the way that things were under Trump. Now, that's going to be very hard for him to achieve in 4 years. And because Biden our borders are a mess. That Trump knows, and he has the right people, and he's got kind of his cabinet in waiting in America First Policy Institute and the Heritage Foundation. They're all ready to be staff up his government so that when he enters on day one, unlike when he entered on day one in 2016 or 2017, he's ready to go. And he's ready to fly, and he's got the plans for the southern border. All of the candidates saying that they want to bring, troops, National Guard down to the border to defend it. That was Donald Trump's original idea. And if you can recall, Cheryl, he was lambasted for it by the press. Like use the military in Mexico, our ally, but now everyone's saying the same exact thing because our borders are just completely open with fentanyl pouring over them, with 85,000 children being sexually trafficked. It's just disgusting. But Donald Trump has the blueprint and to do it. Now, he says he can end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. He hasn't really specifically said how he's going to do that, but he does know the players. And he knows, the leverage points. So he has that, fundamental knowledge. He has the ability with the Abraham Accords to extend that to Saudi Arabia and to normalize our relations there, and then to basically strangle Iran. This Biden regime, $6 billion, basically hostage payment to Iran for it's always terrible when Americans are held overseas against their will, but paying billions of dollars for their return to a regime that says death to America, I don't think is a smart move. And Donald Trump was very, very tough, very supportive of Israel, and worked really hard to normalize relations in the Middle East. And then he's got the trade deals that he needs. He knows that going to EVs is a bad idea. It's stopping the climate change madness, because one of the things that Trump did say last night when he was in Detroit is, with the progressives, you can't be for labor and for climate change. Those two things do not mesh well with one another. And that's why this auto workers strike has got Democrats kind of. Joe Biden only announced he was going to go join the picket line after Donald Trump said that he was going to go talk to the auto workers. Because the Democrats know that on one hand, they want to be supportive of labor, but on the second hand, they are so beholden to their climate change agenda and their Green New Deal that they're going to go through with it, even if that means thousands of jobs lost in Michigan, in Detroit, from our auto workers because of the transition to EVs. So I think Donald Trump can correct a lot of the things, get us back to where we were. I don't think he can. I don't know if he can get inflation. I don't think he can get the mortgages rates back to 2 point whatever percent like they were under his term. But he knows how to correct the course the quickest, I believe, because he's just been 4 years off, whereas all these other candidates are going to have to learn on the job. And I think we're at the point in our country where we can't have somebody learning on the job.
Yeah, and if he goes after the climate change, automatically that bolsters America's national security because, of course, that cuts into China's profits on, they hold like 85% possession of much of the resources that go into making, say, batteries for the electric vehicles and so forth. And I would agree with all those benefits, all those pluses on Donald Trump, and just add this. He came out and said that he wants to bring about a mass deportation, which I think is the only way that we can course correct on these open borders right now. And he also, and to me, this is the biggest deal with Donald Trump, he will take on the globalist forces because right now, Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the United Nations minions are all rubbing their hands in glee, thinking they have a full year left to usher in that great reset, fourth revolution type that really steals American sovereignty and puts us in positions of having to ask for our individual liberties from these global entities. So,
yeah, while we fund them and while American taxpayers fund them with billions of our own dollars that could be used better purposed for things that actually affect our everyday life. Now, Cheryl, before we kind of conclude this, I have one question for you. And this is the question that all the political pundits in this town are talking about. Okay, it looks like Donald Trump has the GOP primary wrapped up. He will be the presidential contender in 2024. Does he win the general or does he lose it? Because there's a lot of people out there with Trump derangement syndrome that can he win in a general election?
Yeah, he can win. And, the question of can he win, that's what was asked back in 2015 when Democrats and Republicans alike were busily mocking Donald Trump as not a serious candidate, a circus show, a clown act. He can't win. Look he won, and he won heartily, and he won handily. And some say he actually even won in this last election, which is still an ongoing question mark in many people's minds. So can he win the general? Most definitely. A lot of it depends on who the Democrats ultimately run. I think Michelle Obama would be the biggest threat that he would face in terms of an opponent and also the biggest danger to America. But yes, Donald Trump can win, and I actually think he has a very good chance of winning again.
Well, I think we should, we'll stay tuned. We follow this every single day. I'm sure there'll be more ups and downs and October surprises and whatnot. Things can change, and maybe Curl isn't wrong and something will drop from the sky and take Donald Trump out. But right now, I just don't see that happening. And so I think it's essential for the Republican Party to get on message, have one message, and keep repeating to get through to the American public. Because if there's one thing I am concerned about, it is the liberal bias of our mainstream media, as well as the censorship from big tech on conservative thought. And so, like, you look at today's hearings, for example, the Biden impeachment inquiry. You can see it on Newsmax, you can see it on Fox News, but it's a virtual blackout on MSNBC, the big three networks, and CNN. So the American public, I think, is waking up. I think that they realize that they've been lied to by the mainstream media and that there are few and far between news sources that they can trust. And that their lives are just, going to the grocery store and paying 20% more than you were when you lived under Donald Trump's, presidency, going to the gas station, having, $100 to fill up your tank. If you're in an SUV, that's just a sticker shock. It's, 8% mortgage rates. These are the things that we encounter in our lives every day that Joe Biden has made demonstrably worse. And it doesn't matter what the mainstream media tells us, that we should trust in Bidenomics and that things will turn around. I think that they're ready for another term of President Trump, even if they don't like his mean tweets and take offense to his personality.
Yeah, and I think we could have a whole other show about the media bias and how that plays into the elections and so forth. But I agree with you, and maybe we should wrap it because it's getting past the half hour we said it was going to be. So I'm Cheryl Chumley with Bold and Blunt.
And I'm Kelly Sadler with Politically Unstable. Thanks for listening to us. And if you have any feedback, shoot me an email. I'm always willing to talk with our listeners and readers. And thanks so much.
Thanks so much.